All right, everyone, we should be live. Let's make sure that's actually the case over on Rumble, where we do have, by the way, our first link as well, because we've got to talk about Donald Trump's SOTU response. We'll be talking about it. Don't worry, lots of good stuff to cover today, as usual. Fairly hefty news day. A lot of good stuff. I actually shuffled around the order that I was going to put them in a little bit, because I figure the first things that you cover should be the most important, while people are fresh and new on the stream, etc. We'll make sure that we're actually live on Rumble. Yes, indeed. You'll probably hear Kitty in the background. I fed the birds, and so there's an army of sparrows out there. The cats like that. You may also hear some baby noises up above. Let's see. I think, yeah, I am live. Okay. Live chat may or may not be working, though. If you can see me and hear me over on Rumble, if you would please drop a live chat, that would be appreciated. By the way, I'm actually starving. We're having sushi tonight. Yes, we are ordering out from the Blue Sakura. I'm getting some tamaki. Trust me, it's eel time. Smoked eel, by the way, is one of the best foods in the world. I don't know why. I think people think that eels are like slimy and squiggly, so they don't eat it more. They really should, though. It's delicious, nice and salty. And I see Mary Jane 6489 early clanking over on Rumble. So yes, the chat is working. Just a moment, everyone. Make sure that everything else is kosher here. All the tabs. Matt Mittens, nothing on Rumble, nothing at. Well, I am live on Rumble. I can see myself. If your sound is acting up, it's probably on your end, so you might want to check that. By the way, slow mode is not on over on YouTube. I've decided to disable that due to popular demand. So yeah, you can clank away at your leisure. There's no slow mode on in the YouTube chat right now. I would ask that people not, spam the chat excessively, just so that I can read the super chats. We'll see how it goes. I will remove that privilege from you if you misuse it. Lots and lots of clanking over there. Anyway, we'll get right to it. First and foremost, of course, the other day was the State of the Union, Biden mumbling his way through. They doped him up to the eyeballs so that he was reasonably coherent, so he didn't have any major gaffe moments, actually. That's a first. The other State of the Union, I think this one was actually better than his last State of the Union, so they must have given him extra amphetamines or whatever the fuck they have him on, some CIA super drug. That's great. He lied repeatedly. He covered basically the same things that everyone expected him to cover. I reduced the deficit. I created all these jobs. I'm bringing gas prices down, even though the president was not responsible for the gas prices when they were rising, which they are again now at the moment and are expected to go considerably higher. But we'll get past that. It was nothing. It's just a charade, ultimately. He didn't say anything that wasn't expected. There were a few unexpected moments courtesy of the GOP when they booed him, when he said that there were Republicans that are trying to sundown your Medicare. Hey, elderly people, vote for us because the Republicans are trying to take your shit away. They've literally used this as a campaign issue in every election and mentioned it in more or less every major address for the last 30 years or so. So it doesn't really mean anything. Nobody's really taken in. That being said, Trump's response was much more succinct. Sarah Huckabee Sanders' response was good, basically saying, look, Biden and his Democratic Party are trying to take more of your money. The country's got issues. He's really glossing over them. He's not really talking about them, et cetera, et cetera. But that's sort of a warranted but expected response. The out party always has the rebuttal to the chief executive's State of the Union. It's a tradition. It has been for a long time. Trump's address, though, link in the description, is better. Number one, it's much shorter. Number two, it's more coherent than anything Joe Biden has ever uttered in his recent career, certainly as steward. And number three, it touches on a number of points that are, again, glossed over by Biden. For example, the border crisis. They don't want to talk too much about that, although Biden made the mysterious reference about fentanyl and saying, well, 70,000 Americans die each year from fentanyl overdose. The Republicans actually jeered him then, too, because, of course, his porous border is one of the reasons for that. But you should definitely watch Trump's response. How long is it? I think it's only it's only 2 minutes long. So you've definitely got the time to do that. If you are over on Rumble right now, by the way, you're already on the right site, because Donald Trump does not have a YouTube channel. He was wrongfully banned several years ago for propagandistic purposes. John Smith, another Twitter shout out, please, at Trump's cool hair. There you go, John Smith. Let's see. Brandy Y, I don't think they'll allow Trump to win ever again. They're rigging it from now on. The fix is in. Well, you've got to wait and see. You've got to actually nominate him before he has any chance, because if he's not the nominee, of course, the only thing he could do is be a spoiler candidate, which would be amusing as hell to me. If Trump is denied the nomination, I hope that he runs as an independent and crashes the whole goddamn party on the way out. Then people can say, well, he wasn't a principled Republican. Good. Neither am I. No, fuck the Republican Party. Who gives a fucking shit? See a lot of crazy shit recently on Twitter. A lot of propaganda. Now the cat decides to start in. She's having a little bit of a song time, it seems, over there. Why don't you watch the birds and just be normal? This is her give me attention whine, by the way. She does it in the middle of the night, too. Can you understand why I'm a bit lower energy some days than others? It's like living in hell. But yeah, Donald Trump's State of the Union response ticks all the boxes that he needed to. One thing I wish that he would do, though, if I had any gripe about Trump at this moment, get your ass back on Twitter. You don't have to use Facebook because, Boomer Baku uses that anyway. At the very least, take your Truth Social posts and replicate them there. Hey, maybe you get banned again. That's just free publicity. That's the way to do it. And no, Nathan, the cat is not in heat. She's just annoying. They were fixed very long ago, like 8 years or something like that. Next news story. The Church of England is considering a gender-neutral God. The Church of England is set to consider referring to God as gender-neutral, and a project is being launched in the spring to discuss whether the pronoun he can be changed or not. As reported by Manchester Evening News and the PA News Agency, any potential alterations would mark a departure from traditional Jewish and Christian teachings dating back millennia, and it would be approved by Synod, the church's decision-making body. Now, I thought that the King or Queen of England had to give the go-ahead for such a thing. The Church of England incepted literally as a differentiation from the churches of the continent, but apparently I was wrong. The Right Reverend Dr. Michael Ipgrave, Bishop of Lichfield, is the vice chair of the liturgical commission responsible for the matter. He said the church has been exploring the use of gendered language in relation to God for several years. After some dialogue between the two commissions in this area, a new joint project on gendered language will begin this spring, he said, in common with other potential challenges to authorized liturgical provision. Changing the wording in a number of authorized forms of absolution would require a full synodical process for approval. Hey, kitty. Now, this is the one that was just singing. Now she's showing her ass. She does it figuratively, then she does it literally. The bishop's comments came in response to a question asked at Synod by the Reverend Joanna Stobart, vicar of Ilminster and White Lackington in Somerset. She asked about the progress on developing more inclusive language in services. Now, I've got several opinions on this, so let me just weigh in before I get to any other super chats. The cat will help me here. Maybe she'll even say something. On the first level, if you're going to have a church with tradition, history, etc., it does not make sense to radically change the ideology. It does not make sense to radically change the language you use, etc. It would be equivalent to the Catholics scrapping the Latin Mass in favor of having local language masses, which they did. It didn't go over well. That's why they have the moniker Vatican 2.0. That doesn't make sense. If you have a tradition, you have beliefs, etc., you conceive of God as male, gendered as a male, you should stick with it. Don't be obfuscating people and pretending, oh, we were always woke to begin with. On the second level, though, as an occultist, there is no gender for such a being. If you look at the Christians or Judeo-Christian ideology itself, this particular being is all-encompassing, all-penetrating. You can get into mystic arguments over what that means, is present everywhere, all-powerful, etc. Therefore, would it be beyond the realm of the pale to say that that particular being, or quasi-being, that cosmic force, that particular entity, has a gender? It wouldn't make any sense to say that it has a gender. I mean, does God have a penis? Because that would be a hallmark. Does God have gender chromosomes? Again, if God is interpenetrating all existence, that would seem to be a no, to be clear. But if you are going to have a tradition, and religion is more about tradition than any legitimate spiritual argument, it's more about rules and things like that. It makes sense to keep it the way that it is. Keep the Church of England as having a male gendered God. You don't need to worry about being inclusive. If you truly believe in the all-powerful nature of this being, it's not necessary to appease anyone for their particular cultural conventions, traditional or non-traditional. You don't have to adapt the way that you do things in favor of some TradCon administration that happens to come in. Let's say British fascism comes back and they want you to change the teachings of the church. Well, you should just tell them to fuck off, because you're protected by God. God will protect the herd. Jesus will be with you. And if you get persecuted for that, you die a martyr's death, and who cares? In the end, you win. And they lose. They go to hell or purgatory or wherever. So why would you change things? It doesn't make any doctrinal sense. Again, though, there is that particular explanation that there is no particular gender of a being that fits under those categories. If God cannot be a female, for instance, could God appear as a woman? Well, clearly, if this being is all-powerful, all-capable and all-encompassing, all-wise, certainly I'm assuming that this deity could figure out a way to grow a vagina and take a corporeal form on. He hasn't done that in a while, though, and most people in the world do refer to, if they have a singular deity, a monotheism, it tends to be on the male side. If you have a polytheism, you have a mix-up. And if you have avatars, if you have a single deity or cosmic source, like in Hinduism, but you have multiple expressions, those tend to be variably gendered. Some of them are also androgyne in nature. Ancient Egypt certainly has this. Hinduism has this. Of course, they're all just outbreathings of Brahma, but there are female deities or female expressions, avatars, etc. Slab, do you think the American people have the mental faculties to not just blindly believe all the lies Biden told last night? Well, half the population will blindly reject everything he said, even where it was true. So keeping that in mind, yes, most people don't have the mental faculties. Those that oppose him, as I do, tend not to be particularly cognizant either. We'll be completely and brutally honest here. A lot of people just hate him because he's a Democrat. I hate him because he's doing a bad job. Critical orc theory. Dumbledore should have cast down the Goblinese scrying balloon. It made him look weak. David Coombs. Unpopular opinion. If you cross the border illegally, you are an invading force and forfeit the right to live. I don't hate people, but there's legal ways. We will talk about that briefly. I would point out that a snap judgment of someone crossing your territory, your particular field, your ranch, you cannot be judge, jury, and executioner. You don't, I mean, are you going to walk up and say, hey, where's your paperwork? Have you got your driver's license on you? And then if they don't have it, then you shoot them. I have some misgivings about some aspects of this story, with a couple of asides, so we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Not a banned account. SOTU was normal. I agree, it was incoherent as usual. Husbands in the 60s always kissed others, couples' wives on the lips. It was a different time. Why in the 40s you'd French strangers? Yes, Jill Biden actually almost making out with Kamala's husband. It was a little bit of a weird moment. I won't subject you to putting the link in the description. If you have a strong stomach, you can look it up for yourself. Just imagine the flavor of those dentures after she samples Joe Biden's prune juice. Dutch West Indian Co. Was Henry VIII gay? Explains why he killed his wives and started the Church of England. No, but he apparently did have some dysfunctions in the sexual nature. The Defamation League. Our band is finally unbanned on Musk's platform. Our handle at Defamation League Music. I'll give you a shout out here. Also, new Biden meme after the State of the Union. Let's go, Tyler. Not a banned account. Could God appear as a Chinese doom balloon? Yeah, exactly. God could appear as a turd. Just because you find it objectionable doesn't mean that the Lord your God wouldn't be capable of transforming into any particular form. Wasn't there a show called Joan of Arcadia back in the 90s or 2000s or something, and God would appear as a stripper and shit like that? Can't remember. Smoo Johnson. Hi, Sticks. I'm curious to try a deep fake of you. Any topic suggestions, or should I get creative? I suppose my NCAP friend and I could give it a try. Just make me say the most insane, out there shit possible. That will definitely get me going. I've got a... There we go. Yeah, don't worry. I would never throw an object at the cat, but I will throw it near the cat in order to distract her from attacking her sister. I do not believe in animal abuse. I do believe in distracting animals that are acting badly. Sometimes you just got to belly up to the bar. Yeah, we'll go right into the second story here, though, because this was already queried. 73-year-old Arizona rancher charged with first-degree murder for fatally shooting illegal alien on his property, held on $1 million bond. Now, he had argued, well, can you just let me go because I've got cows to milk and my wife is old and she can't do it herself. I can kind of sympathize with that. I mean, it's an old dude. Even if you give him life in prison, like you find him guilty and shit, how long is that going to be? 5 years? 10 years, generally speaking? If you look at an actuary table, dude's an old rancher. That being said, I have multiple levels of feeling about this. We're going to put on our lawyer caps because that's really what matters with regards to this. And keep in mind, when you're seeing this story about the Arizona rancher, we do not have anywhere near full details on this story. We don't know what situation led him to shoot this particular individual that was trespassing on his property. And trespassing they were. Trespass generally under state law, and there are exceptions, is not a killing offense. If this individual was moving towards him in a threatening manner, that may be an aside. If they brandished a weapon, that may be an aside. If they yelled threats, they said, I'm going to wring your neck, fuck you, gringo, that might be an aside. If a person is simply crossing your property, even if you yourself know them to be illegal because they literally just hopped the fence, that alone does not give you the ability to kill them. You can arm yourself to make sure that you don't get hurt. You can protect yourself, protect your property. You can call the police, although, I mean, this is the southern border. They're not going to fucking do anything other than briefly detain the person, fingerprint them, and then let them go. And this was a repeat crosser, to be clear. This individual had crossed the border before. It was Gabriel Quinn Butimia, and George Allen Kelly is the name of the rancher. But just because someone's on your property, if they're not doing anything else, like let's say that I wake up in the morning, I'm in Rutland, by the way, at the time. Somebody's out puttering around on the front lawn. They're clearly trespassing on the property. Do I have the right to shoot them? No, of course not. They're not doing anything else that would be considered aggravating. Trespass is not a capital offense. I can call the police. I can certainly arm myself. I can certainly tell them to get the fuck off the property. Once, by the way, I tell them to get off the property, it escalates the situation. If they then don't vacate, then definitely it's time to call the police. Maybe they're on meth. In Rutland, that's definitely possible. Or on crack, or heroin, or any other drug under the sun, because Rutland is goddamn overrun by drugs. But I can't simply blow their head off. That's the case as well, even in states that are very lenient with regards to self-defense scenarios. Generally, if it's in your house, if a person has broken in, that's generally a different story. Although you do need to check state laws. There are states in which even if a person comes into your home without authorization, you cannot take any lethal action against them. Now, we'll really quickly cover something here, a subtopic. Ethics versus what the law is. I am fully aware as a libertarian that sometimes the law does not make sense. I've spoken before of a particular situation. It's a very rare one, thankfully, but it can happen. A person breaks into your home and you have a Glock on one side of your hip and you have pepper spray on the other side of your hip. Now that person, you're hoping not to kill them. You don't want to kill someone. You don't have the guts for it or whatever. So you deploy the pepper spray. You incapacitate them, call the police. They haul the person off for breaking and entering, trespass, whatever, the vandalism. They broke through a window. You can be charged with aggravated assault because of this. And I'll explain why. It shouldn't happen. It's not ethical. It's unconstitutional, but that's not the current understanding of the law. A prosecutor, if he wants, can argue in a court of law, you were not in fear at that time. You had a lethal weapon. If you were in fear, you would have used it. You chose not to use that. Instead, pepper sprayed him. You assaulted my client. How dare you do that? A civil lawsuit. You can end up paying millions of dollars. The law does not always make sense, but you need to be aware of the law. Some people this morning thought that I'm like simping for illegal immigration or something like that for merely pointing this out. I'm like, you don't understand. Arizona state law may or may not provide for a defense for this rancher, depending on what the illegal was doing at the time. If the rancher sees someone crossing his property and chooses to leave his residence, let's say he was in the house, he was in the barn, he saw him at the time, person's unarmed, they're not approaching, they're not threatening, he will probably get found guilty because of the law. Clearly he wasn't in danger. He chose to exit a safe space where, the individual may not have known he even was in order to approach the other individual. It's as clear cut as that, but we don't know that to be the case. People are currently reporting and analyzing on this as though they know the situation of the case. It is extremely complex and convoluted because our legal system is complex and convoluted. That's the only point that I decided to make earlier. And some people, predictably, I think I stated this in my video, yeah, I expect that people will jump down my throat for this, for my opinion. Apparently, informing people that you should generally be aware of state law so you don't get yourself locked up for 20, 30 years is a bad thing to some people. They would rather remain ignorant and in their echo chambers. David Coombs, I agree. I don't want senseless killing. I don't want some random hillbillies deciding who lives and dies. I just want people to do it legally. Yeah, I mean, if you change the law and say, hey, you see someone hopping the border, you can blow them away, well, then you're covered. But that's not the way the law currently works, now is it? Not a bad account. Undocumented Americans are American too. Dreamers. Rob S. Clank. Yeah, I had a spoon in my videos earlier. Didn't even realize till after I'd recorded the last one. Scarfy the Strange. For crying out loud, deep fakers, just get the Bible or the transcript of the most hellfire and brimstone preacher. There's your AI sticks vid. Imagine when they have AI singing, by the way. That will be something. I will tinker with that at the time. I'm glad I have so many clips of myself speaking so I can synthesize things. Someone needs to get a fundraiser going to do an open source AI system for audio. You could make music, you could make singing, you do so many great things. And by the way, on the AI topic, I know it's not in the docket, but let me deviate just for a minute. Well, AI could be used to save a lot of lives, really goddamn innovate and enrich the entire world. I hate to tell you, but it's going to be corporatized, sanitized, used to help the 1% and their political allies, and everyone else will get censored and screwed. Unfortunately, unlike the early wave of the internet, they've already proactively decided to police it. It's not going to be as fun, unfortunately, as IRC chat rooms were in the 90s. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, and I am not a black-pilled individual. I'm just a realist. David Coombs, I meant immigrate legally, lol, not kill legally. Yeah, exactly. I have no problem with immigrants. I mean, I'm currently residing in the Netherlands. I'm technically a quasi-expat at the moment, so I'm no hypocrite. I don't even know fluent Dutch. That has rubbed one of our neighbors the wrong way at one point because he didn't speak much English. I'm like, well, anyone under 50 in the country is pretty much fluent in English, but this dude was a little bit on the older side. And had a problem because I had a trash bag out behind the shed. I just put it there because I wanted it out of the way before I took the trash over to the trash receptacle. And he comes pounding on the door, threatening to call the police because I had a bag. And guess what was in the bag? Not diapers, not old rotting food or something. It was clippings from the garden. The ivy and shit that already hangs over the edge of the fence. Real threat to you. It smells so terrible. Freshly cut ivy. Oh my God. Many such cases. Although I do have to say, people in the Netherlands, by and large, are pretty laid back, pretty friendly. We do have one person on the block that's no, not necessarily. Uh-oh, Sticks, love thy neighbor. Anyway, I made myself laugh a little bit there. I was just thinking about how funny his reaction was. Next news story. Democratic Party leaders like Biden, even if they don't love him, and that may be just enough. This article, this is a CNN politics piece, simping for Biden to be the candidate in 24. Well, Joe's not perfect. We don't really love Joe. He doesn't really enthuse anyone. He's not exciting. He's barely coherent, but we like him. I'm thinking to myself, of course the goddamn DNC likes him. The corporate powers that be, I think that some of them do love Biden because he'll give them a lot of handouts, hoping it'll trickle down to the little guy. Billionaires will get more enriched. His tax code is designed to help the super rich, especially with the restoration of the unlimited SALT deduction, by the way. That applies mostly to a handful of blue states, just to be clear about who gets that money. They like him. I wonder why. Could it be the cash grab in Ukraine? Could it be the going back to the old bad days of, the Bush-Obama policies, the globalism and shit? Paris Climate Accords. Basically, he's an empty suit. They can do whatever they want through him, and he's their puppet. Of course they love him. I don't think that it's just like. I think that the article is only wrong in underestimating how much care they actually have for Biden. That doesn't mean they don't throw him under the bus because he's too goddamn old. He's in his 80s now. He is not coherent. They have to dope him up to the eyeballs for him to do the SOTU speech here. He's still managed to go off the rails a couple of times. Yes, a man who takes 2 or 3 days off a week, spends a great deal of time, again, about a third of all of his time in Delaware, frequent vacationing, not often seen in public except for brief periods, doesn't like to answer questions, doesn't like to do debating, etc. Yes, if you get him in one of his prime moments and you dope him up, he's capable of being coherent for an hour. Well, you can do that with pretty much anyone else who's old and has cognitive decline as well, if you're willing to dope them up to the eyeballs. I almost feel sorry for him at certain points. But then that takes us right into the next article, which is from the Washington Examiner. President Nobody Wants to Run prepares re-election bid. Yes, indeed, talking about Joe Biden. The problem is this. Between this article and the last one, you see what? A disconnect. And by the way, this formatting is wrong. Just a second here. Something's wonky on the side. Okay, I think I fixed it. Yeah, I managed to fix it. Here's the problem. The DNC, the DC insiders, the DCCC, etc., all those people like Biden. They at least tolerate him. They have no problem with him. Some of them really like him because he's the empty suit. He will do what they want him to do. The problem is that even among lay Democrats, not just the general population, which includes Republicans, just among Democrats, only a minority of people want Biden to run again. This, by the way, is the same problem the GOP has. The GOP already has a candidate in waiting. That's Donald Trump. They could choose to amplify him and hold him up and go with it. They're choosing not to do so. In so doing, the uniparty Republicans are alienating a vast plurality of Republican voters. It may not be a full-on majority if you're just considering the really hardcore Trump fans, but it's a significant minority. It's about 40% of the party. If you look at right-leaning independents, his support is reasonably high. In party overall, his support is still in the upper 70s. It's at Reagan levels. The Republicans are doing the same thing, I hate to tell you. And we have to be more cognizant of this. A lot of times it boils down to, well, look at those Democrats and their dysfunction. Of course they're dysfunctional. I mean, they're Democrats, so it would be odd if they weren't. The Republicans are doing the same thing. We may end up with a situation where the Democrats have their incumbent, but people don't like the incumbent. The Republicans are potentially denied Trump, even though largely the lay Republicans, especially on the populist side, support him. And all hell breaks loose because everyone's been alienated. And nobody's gotten what they want. You could end up seeing not a third, but a fourth party candidate. The Green Party could campaign to the left and say, look, they're foisting Biden on you. He's old. He can't win, blah, blah, blah. He hasn't done the things you wanted him to do. No student loan debt forgiveness, etc. And come from the left. They could do it Justice Dem style. Meanwhile, if the GOP does go with Trump, the non-MAGA Republicans, the anti-Trumpers, the TDS sufferers, they'll amalgamate behind some other candidacy. They'll have an independent or a third-party run. Maybe they'll back the Libertarians. Maybe it'll be an independent run by Romney or something like that. If Trump, meanwhile, is not the candidate, then that populist core probably flies the coop. He may run as an independent anyway. You could have a five-way race. You could have Joe Biden versus the far-left candidate from the Justice Dem side, versus the uniparty GOP, whoever that is, maybe Mike Pence or whatever. That'd be hilarious, by the way, versus Donald Trump versus the Libertarian Party gobbling up the populist fringe. You could end up with a five-way race. All hell breaks loose. It would be difficult to imagine a scenario in which either mainline candidate has a mandate regardless of who wins, by the way, if that occurs, because there'd be too many millions of votes being siphoned off. Don Jones. Cat lover here. As a pagan, do you believe cats have a special spiritual quality? The ancient Egyptians thought so. Thoughts? Yes, I agree. I do believe that cats are specifically pagan and occult in nature. They're wiser than most other animals, which is why they piss us off so much. They also formed a significant part of humankind's early civilized development. Of course, before the era of granaries and so forth, you wanted a dog. The dog can defend the cave, and I know that people didn't literally live in caves most of the time, but we'll be hip to the stereotype. Defend the cave, help bring down the mammoth or something. Once you started getting surplus crops, grains, beans, etc., you wanted cats because those crops in those early granaries ran afoul of rats very easily. And what do rats bring? Rats and mice, they bring disease. So you wanted quite a few cats around. They co-evolved with humans. Unlike dogs, we never successfully bred the wildness out of them, though. If you own cats, you probably understand. Smoo Johnson, I used IRC back in the 90s. I'm guessing you were on EFNet or Dalnet. It was the internet Wild West back then, a much better time. Yeah, ICQ comes to mind as well. I helped to destroy their web chat. The Defamation League, Biden was slurring his words quite a bit last night. Do you think someone let him near Pelosi boo stash, or was that just baseline Biden? That's just Biden. He speaks that way anyway. Also, again, add us on our newly unbanned Musk's platform account. You can join them on Twitter, the Defamation League. The Grizzly, do you think this country survives the uniparty getting fractured apart, or would we go full Tim Pool? I think his worry is a long shot, and I think he's the boy who cried at Boogaloo. Well, no insult to Tim Pool, but I do not believe that we're headed for civil war or some sort of collapse at the moment. Joe Biden is one drug-using son of a bitch. Joe Biden is doped up to the eyeballs on various pills before public engagements. Most of the time it works. When the Easter Bunny's around, somehow it fails. Next news story. It's a Politico piece. Opinion, cancel the State of the Union. Now, it's funny because right now, the leftoid media is trying to astroturf the concept that Biden's State of the Union was perfect. It was so great. Look at how coherent Joe was. A pro tip, everyone, when you have to point out the fact that he was coherent for an hour, it's because he's often incoherent. That's not exactly a win, but the leftoids haven't quite gotten it. Politico calling for this the other day, actually before the State of the Union, and I know why. They want to get rid of the State of the Union because they are desperately afraid that even if not in this State of the Union, maybe the next one, Joe Biden completely goddamn loses it. They're afraid that he'll go off the rails, that he'll say something that's totally off the chain, totally completely wrong, that he won't be able to focus on his notes because the dude is demented. That's what they're worried about. You remember the last State of the Union was pushed ahead to historical new points, supposedly because of a pandemic, but they needed more time to prep poor Joe. He has to be doped up to the eyeballs in order to be coherent. They are worried that even if it worked this time, and this was written right before the State of the Union, they were worried about it already. They're breathing a sigh of relief, telling everyone over and over again, look how coherent Joe was. Look how well worded he was, how poised and poignant he was. But next time he might not be. He has Alzheimer's disease. I can tell you based on the symptoms that he shows in public on a regular basis. I liked it when, I can't remember which Krasen scene it was the other day. It was like, oh, shame on you. I think to Lauren Boebert for talking about cognitive decline. This is disrespectful to those of us who suffered when a relative had Alzheimer's. I did. I watched my grandfather suffer with Alzheimer's for years. While Joe Biden is not in the late stage, he's capable of walking, he's capable of talking, he understands generally what's going on. He is in cognitive decline. Just stop gaslighting and look at the footage for yourself. He does make speeches once in a while. Certainly, there is a big difference between Joe Biden now and Joe Biden 3 or 4 years ago. Even candidate Biden was more coherent than Stuart Biden currently is. They're terrified that by the next State of the Union, a whole nother year has to pass. Joe will be almost 83 years old at the time. They are worried that he won't be able to cut it. And if that happens, but if he has also announced that he is going to run for the presidency, that makes all hell break loose because he becomes what? Unelectable. And that means that they have to double down with the Uniparty McConnellites in the Republican Party to try to block Trump from being the nominee. Because otherwise he steamrolls Joe, he gets his job back, breaks all the toys again, and they're afraid of this. That's why they don't want Joe to run. They really want him to stand down, but they're not sure that he will. There is a little bit of a stubbornness and egotism in Joe Biden, just to be clear. He was a fairly cutthroat senator. He was more of a chucklehead for Obama as VP, but that was when he was playing a role. He was the court jester. But for 35 years before that, he was a cutthroat senator. He was the author, the architect of the tough on crime era of the 1990s. He was the anti-busing dude. He was effectively anti-integration at times. He was the one who warned of a racial jungle, that I don't want to put my kids in a school that has a bunch of people that don't look like them and stuff like that. He's not a kind old man, a touchy-feely neoliberal that you eat ice cream with. This is how he's been cast off for propaganda purposes. That ain't Joe. He doesn't act like that. In private life, he's totally different. People are totally taken in by that fucking bullshit. Sassamatas. Good morning, Sticks. I have a job interview today for a position that would nearly double my income and cut my commute in half. Wish me luck, clankers. Good luck. That sounds like a good gig. Just believe that you'll get it and swagger in there and see what happens. Make sure to give a firm handshake. Unless the boss is a soy boy, then you should probably just, do the slimy fish handshake or something like that. So, yeah, they want to cancel the State of the Union. And again, it's obvious why. They're afraid that Joe won't be able to cut it the next time around. They want to keep their gerontocracy going. And then the final news story, Gateway Pundit reporting, elementary school starts student club that excludes white kids. And unlike the fear-mongering headlines you sometimes get in right-wing literature, admittedly, this one appears to be corroborated. This appears to actually be what's going on here. Racism remains alive and well in our nation's public schools, particularly in dark blue states. A recently released email shows that the Centennial Elementary School in Olympia, Washington, it's Washington, so are you fucking surprised? Engaged in blatant segregation by barring white children from a student affinity group that meets during lunchtime, which is, by the way, illegal because this is a taxpayer-funded public school. The authenticity of the email has been confirmed by school officials, according to conservative talk show host Jason Rantz. Jason Rantz. What a last name to have a talk show, by the way. I'm assuming that's a pen name. School principal Shannon Ritter tells parents in the email, we have a 5th grade BIPOC student group, so basically colored people student group, that meets weekly during their lunchtime. She goes on to mention that the group does not include white children. Now, there is one weaselly sentence in here. Does that mean that there aren't currently any white kids in it, or does it mean that they're not allowed to be part of this lunch group? Because that would be a big differentiation. Although I don't believe such groups should exist in a taxpayer-funded school at all, that would make a legal difference. But we'll wait and see if we get any updates on that. Ritter also says the school is exploring adding an additional student ally club, citing the interest of some students. The message does not specify whether this hypothetical group will exclude white kids as well. Well, if it's an ally club, that would be for the white kids that support the BIPOC kids, which would be hilarious. It would be irony on like the 3rd level. There is significant evidence that this group is blatantly illegal. No shit, particularly when one considers it was orchestrated by school officials. Here's what Mark Lamb, a Seattle-based attorney, told Rantz. The fact that this is occurring in an elementary school makes it even more problematic from a legal perspective. The age of the students, coupled with the principal's email, re this club, makes it apparent this is not a primarily student-led decision, but rather one being generated and defended by the school itself, said Lamb. That would be the other thing. I mean, if students want to form a club, it can be as segregationalist as it wants. As long as it's not given the green light, it's not being given money, it's not being promoted in like literature or something. You're not putting a presser out to the parents because that requires taxpayer money. If the students want to have a black kid club, let them. Who gives a fucking goddamn shit? I think it would go over better than a white kid club. There is hypocrisy there, but let them do what they want. Here's the boys club. There's the girls club. Here's the boys and girls club. Here's the freakazoid club. Yeah, we go out behind the school and we smoke weed after classes. Let them have a weed club. Hell, that'd probably be, imagine this. Which one do you think would be more tolerated in today's culture? A club at school where a bunch of 8th graders go out behind the school and smoke weed, or a club that's only like white kids reading, like pro-white literature or something, like they're reading the Turner Diaries. Wolf on the Plains. It wasn't a SOTU. It was a campaign speech full of lies, half lies, and gaslighting. Plagiarized Trump's policies of America First. Pathetic. Yes, absolutely. Although I will mention that the State of the Union has been a campaign speech now for many, many years. Separate is inherently unequal, according to the Supreme Court. Yes, if this is being sponsored by any teacher, any taxpayer-funded official in the school, it's blatantly illegal. If it's just the student's idea and the school is simply letting parents know that it exists, that's not necessarily illegal, although if the email was made on school time with a school account, it probably is. If it was made by a more private account, bootstrapping the email list, it's probably not. It's probably legal. That being said, the white kids in the school should form a counter club just to push the issue. Have 3 or 4 of get some of the weird kids together that really like to troll people and have them form a Caucasian club or something like that. And then when it necessarily gets a full meeting, say, look, well, there's already a similar club. It's racially based. It's segregationist in nature, and it's being promoted. Why aren't you promoting our club? Then try to get the teachers to promote the Caucasian Literature Club or whatever you formed and see how that goes over. You want to get some attention? Again, it's the squeaky wheel that gets the oil, It's about time that people antagonize a little bit more. Some people say the kids aren't all right. They're being all antagonistic. They're making TikTok videos where they're twerking. It's like, no, they're not antagonistic enough. That's the problem. Fair Frozen 55. Your Arizona analysis popped up in my notices, and I thought it was a Razor Fist video. I was genuinely confused when it started, and you were there. Interesting. The Defamation League. Hunter Biden's campaign slogan, make crack pipes great again. Yeah, you remember that time that free crack pipes were subsidized by Joe Biden? I wonder if that was a pointed message to his son. It'd be funny if it was actually an insult, like he said, basically saying, ah, ha, ha. Yeah, you're on crack, and you've been broke multiple times. You keep fucking stealing state secrets from my garage to sell to buy crack and stuff. Well, at least you can get your crack pipe for free. Transylvanian 90. This BIPOC story ties into the recent increase in LGBTs. Being part of these groups is akin to being a member of the Communist Party under communism. That's how I look at Olid poll. I just consider myself an individual, not right-wing or left-wing. I see myself as myself. I am the head clanker. That's the other thing. Being part of a group usually is a weakness when you really think about it. Individuals, true individuals have no reason for that. They stand on their own merits. The fact that I've succeeded in life isn't because I'm white. The liberals keep telling me that it is, but that's clearly not the case. Aussie's Robots. Kathy Wood has an interesting video with data points about how we're headed towards an economic collapse. One reason I'm looking for a farm. Yeah, or just get a decent property in an area that's reasonably arable. Build it up with a lot of terra preta. By the way, I can help you with this. Get some hugel culture going and do a home farm. You can grow a shit ton of food on an acre of land. And an acre of land, I mean, I think it's expensive, obviously. It's like the price of a car, but it's within reach of the average person, at least on the margins of the upper middle class. I can't wait to get my own land. I want it to be stream side. Like, I would like to have a water source on it so that I can, you imagine how fun it would be. You go out there and you just start piling up rocks and stuff, and you sit out there for 4 or 5 hours and nobody can do anything about it. You can flood a little area here, terraform it a little bit there, and then have a little swampy garden with swamp marigolds and shit like that. That's what I'm talking about. Jarkai 1 with terra preta. Simply take hardwood lump charcoal, grind it up, make sure not to do metal on metal. You might blow yourself up. And then add this to a soil substrate. You'll have to nitrogenize it unless you want to let it sit for an extended period. You can use animal urine, etc. Don't add fertilizer because it breaks down microbes in the soil and so forth. Mix it together. Add a significant amount of this to each plant or to the beds themselves. It is high in carbon, and most soil in the world is carbon poor. Joseph Price, do you have an opinion on the Tim Pool Eliza Blue situation? My opinion remains the same as yesterday. I am opposed to all forms of censorship, but I'm not going to dogpile Tim Pool, the Quartering, Venti, or anyone else, and I have no further opinion. I don't believe that anyone should have been penalized for posting video clips or stills from the Eliza Blue, I guess it was on World Star or something like that, video. That clearly runs afoul of fair use. So I don't support that. I don't have any problem with Tim Pool, with the quartering, or with anyone else. I don't have a side. I'm on my own side. I'm on your side if you're a clanker. I have my own audience. I don't have to engage in e-drama. Aussie's Robots offered to buy 50 acres, need a clanker to run it. 50 acres is an awful lot for one person to maintain unless a lot of it is like managed forest or just a field or something like that. I don't think you need 50 fucking acres in order to grow enough for your canning projects. I'm looking more in the, like, if I bought a piece of land, I think I'd get like 5 acres or something like that. Because I mean, just the property in Rutland that we're on, and that's already pretty big, is about 2.3. Property that's double that size, I could put in a gun range. I could have chickens. I could have a fucking goat. I could have an acre of home garden and a field of goddamn wheat, and it would all fit on that piece of land with a little bit of managed forest or orchard around the edge. That's sort of what I want to do. I would like to grow more fruit trees too. Fresh pears, fresh Bartlett pears right in the middle of summer, sun warmed and nice and soft. Not a bad account. Will Joe Biden get 90% of the vote or 99% in 2024? I don't know. We shall see. The Grizzly. Do you think Trump is more likely than not going to win 24, especially if things continue as they are or get worse under this globalist regime? If things get demonstrably worse, I think he'd be a shoo-in. Honk honk aside. We'll have to be very, very wary of honking going on in the next election. Obviously, it still did go on in the last one, although to a more limited extent. It's being reduced, but it needs to be reduced further. If the economy were to improve, like let's say that things get more balanced, the inflation starts to peter out and it doesn't come back, gas prices don't rise this summer as they're expected to do, then it's feasible that the Dems could win, but probably not with Biden because, I mean, he's ancient. He's not coherent enough. They'd have to throw him under the bus and get booty judge maybe. Joseph Price, thanks for actually answering. I appreciate it. By the way, send no more super chats, please, because I have to go offline at some point. Later on, I will be ordering sushi. Oh, yes, smoked eel, one of my favorite foods. Rocky, any plan to move back to the States? I will be splitting my time between the United States and the Netherlands. When I am back in the States, though, I am looking to the possibility of moving to a warmer climate for gardening purposes. There are places where land is half the price and the season's twice as long. What the fuck am I doing? I'm looking into the possibility. Like, I like Vermont. I've been there for most of my life, although I was born in New Hampshire, so that's always an option too. New Hampshire is a nice state. I like Vermont, but it's very high tax. It's very cold, and it's a state in decline, honestly. 10 years ago, I would have told you Vermont's like a miniature paradise. Now I can't tell you that. It's got significant problems. DN, move to Virginia, Sticks. I've looked at Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, parts of Pennsylvania, actually, southern Pennsylvania. I don't know. I'd like to, I hate winter. I like to grow things. I don't mind a little bit of snow for a month or so, but, you know, in Vermont, it lasts for 5 months. It's a little bit much. I'm getting older now. I got a crick in my back and bad bones and stuff like that. My arthritis, my rheumatism's acting up. Anyway, I believe that the baby is now fully awake and getting grumpy, probably wanting to be fed. So I think I'm going to go offline here. So yeah, to all of those that showed up, I thank you very much for watching the show. Almost about 4,300 people, almost half of which were on Rumble, by the way. Things are definitely picking up there more than on YouTube. I will be back tomorrow with another bitchin' live stream. It's tubular, yo. So now dab on them. That's about all. Peace out.